Compliance. How far is too far? Well, compliance is a slippery slope. People can comply for a number of reasons. A big motivator for compliance is usually fear. Compliance can come in many forms from many different people, and it usually takes some convincing. For example, a parent wants their child to comply with their order to go to bed, so they offer a reward, or the latter, a punishment. It's a form of motivation either way, whether that be negative or positive reinforcement. Another great example is from the 2012 movie Compliance. A man calls a fast food restaurant impersonating a police officer. He convinces the staff to engage in despicable and disgusting acts, which results in a 19-year-old girl undergoing psychologically damaging humiliation. Obviously, the man didn't start with outrageous demands, or that would have raised some red flags immediately for the staff, and they would have started asking him questions. In When Is Compliance a Bad Thing by Amy Baker, she writes, "To take people places they don't want to go, you have to lead them there step by step," which is exactly what he did. And I think this is a perfect description of what happened in the movie and what happens in our day-to-day that we don't even recognize. Throughout the movie, the staff of the restaurant partaking in these horrific acts are complying because they want to be seen as cooperative so they don't question his authority. Another really good quote by Amy Baker that I find best describes my previous statement is, "But to defy authority at that point would mean that they had made a mistake." Towards the end of the movie, it becomes increasingly clear that both parties involved in these inhumane acts, the staff and the 19-year-old victim, are both clearly suffering. Blind obedience to authority has some very sad and painful outcomes, Amy Baker stated as she spoke about Stanley Milgram's experiment. So a question I'm sure you have is, well, when do you start asking questions? When is too much? How did they not know what they were doing was wrong? Which is all very valid questions, but there really is no set answer. Human beings are social creatures. We care very deeply about our relationship with others. This movie perfectly portrays the ways that good people can be led to do bad things in order to not disappoint authority figures. It all depends on the person, their relationship with authority and authority figures, their values, and their sense of self-preservation. In The Compliance Problem by Randy E. Barnett, he lays it out perfectly when he writes, "Though some perceptions of conflict between justice and interest are illusory and can be resolved by better appreciation of one's true interests or the limits of justice, genuine gaps between justice and interest can be caused by emergency conditions or by the desire of pecuniary gain or psychological gain. Although a person's sense of values can be strong, they can still be swayed or convinced to do something that they aren't completely convinced of." Barnett writes, "Usually, the gap between justice and interest is closed by the processes of socialization," which goes back to my point that human beings are just social creatures and are afraid of disappointing others in the fear of repercussions. However, just because compliance has its negatives doesn't mean that it doesn't have its positives too. For instance, a doctor needs a patient to comply so that they could get the help that they need in order for them to get better. Sometimes the patient has no interest to get better. This can be caused because of a multitude of reasons. Regardless, the patient still needs to comply to reach a point where they could be considered healthy. Doctors will try to build a healthy relationship between the patient and their treatment plan to get them to comply, or in medical terms, adhere to the treatment plan so that they get the necessary help. In an article by Dr. Subho Chakrabarty, he explains in detail how adherence can aid to the compliance of a doctor's order. He writes, "About half or more of the patients with chronic psychiatric illnesses either do not take their medications correctly or completely stop taking them. Adherence has been used as a replacement for compliance in an effort to place the clinician-patient relationship in its proper perspective. Compliance, while often viewed as a necessary part of human interaction, can be a double-edged sword. As demonstrated in the movie Compliance and the writings of Amy Baker and Randy E. Barnett, blind obedience to authority can lead individuals to make harmful decisions that they otherwise might not have made. Social pressures, fear of authority, and the desire to avoid conflict can cloud our judgment and push us towards actions that go against our moral compass. However, Compliance also has its positives, such as in healthcare, where adherence to treatment plans can significantly improve patient outcomes. Ultimately, the challenge lies in discerning when compliance is appropriate and when it becomes harmful. It is crucial to foster critical thinking, encourage questioning of authority, and recognize the complexities of human behavior in order to avoid the dangerous pitfalls of unquestioning obedience.